All right, so for this next part of this series, let's just go ahead and create a couple more products, and we're going to try to do the checkout page. So let's log in as the admin, and let's just create a couple of products here. So we'll do like bread, that could be one, $10, awesome bread. And then let's get a picture of some bread. So bread image, it looks good. Save image as, save it to my desktop. And let's just go ahead and add that one. All right, so now we got bread and we got eggs. So, I mean, we could keep adding stuff. I don't want to waste your time and my own time, but you can kind of get the idea. Let's just go ahead and see if we can log in as a normal user. So right now we're logged in as the admin user, but we probably want to log in as a normal user so that we can add it to our cart and then check out. So I'm going to click that log out button, click login, and I'm going to say user at example.com. I think this is another user that I created just recently. And when I log in, same view, but what we're going to do is we're going to add maybe some eggs to our cart, and then we're also going to add some bread to our cart. In fact, let's just do 2 breads. So now we have 3 items in our cart. If we click on cart, we can see all of those items. Now there is an issue. The issue that we see here is that the image is not displayed correctly. So let's see if we can fix that real quick. So let's go to our shopping cart page and find out where we are displaying that image, which happens to be on line 9. And we have product.image here, so we can say product.image to get the full image. In fact, I think we also need to do like that localhost 8080 and interpolate that. See if this works. All right, so I think I need to start my client. I don't know if I even have it started right now. Let's see what's going on here. Let's just restart the client just in case. All right, and there's our giant image of some milk. So again, a quick little fix is we could just add a class name to this and say width of 100% so that it only expands to the size of the parent container, which happens to be this column. But yeah, we could just go ahead and, oh, we don't even have cost displayed anymore. We should probably display the cost on both this page. So let's just put a cost here. Make sure that shows up. Also put a money sign in front of it so we know how much it is. And now that I've added that cost, if you go back to the home page, you'll notice that we're not displaying the cost here either. So we should probably go back to the main page, which is the products page. And again, let's just display the cost so that the user can actually see how much these things cost. And one thing that we could probably do is maybe display the total up in the header if we wanted to, but let's just focus on something simple first. So on this page, on the shopping cart page, we probably want a button that says like checkout or something, and it shows you like a total. So down at the very bottom, we're just going to go ahead and do that. I've seen cool sites on the side where you have like a panel that shows up that shows you like your total and stuff, but let's just do it at the very bottom of this. So, or maybe at the top. Just do it at the top. So let's go to the shopping cart page and let's go ahead and go to above where we render out the shopping cart items, which would be here. And what we're trying to do is we want to basically on this, we can make a new row, I guess. And we could just go ahead and display the total. And maybe a button. So I'll say button. Make sure that comes from React Bootstrap if I don't already have that. And check out. And let's do variant of secondary maybe. All right, so in order to get the total cost, like right now we'll just hard code it. But we need to actually compute this, okay? So the way that we can compute it is simply write a function to loop over all of our products and add them up. So we have our products here. This is cart, which has all of our products. And we can make a function called like get total cost. And we could just basically have that be a function, or it could be a computed if you want. It doesn't really matter. We could do like a reduce function if you wanted to add them up. Actually, that might be easiest. So let's just do this dot reduce. And then we're going to pass that a callback that says like product and sum in product. So by the way, if you don't know how reduce works in JavaScript, you basically pass it a callback, and that callback is going to have the first argument be your accumulator or your sum, if you're doing like a sum operation, and your second argument is going to be the element in the array that you're looping over. And really, if you wanted to add up every item in your array, you just do this reducer, and then this function needs to return sum plus product dot sum, or dot cost, I mean. So basically sum up the cost of all the items. And I think if we've done that correctly, we should be able to render it out to the page. So now instead of hard coding this number here, we could just interpolate that get total cost. In fact, I'm going to rename this to total cost because it's not a function, it's just a computed variable. And now let's see what happens. So reduce is actually failing pretty hardcore right now. So let's figure out why this is failing. It's saying reduce of an empty array with no initial value. Okay, so when this component mounts, I guess there's no elements. So you need to make sure that you pass or reduce an initial value. So we're going to do 0 here so that I can actually just keep adding numbers to 0. And now you have total cost of 0 printing out. Now the issue is that our shopping cart like disappears when you refresh the page because we're not storing the cart anywhere in like local storage. So what I would recommend doing is just store it in local storage. You could also store it in like a session storage of your backend, which is a little bit more complicated, or you could store it in a cookie in your backend, which is a little bit more, or cookie in your browser, which again is a little bit more complicated. So I like doing local storage for tutorials because it's easier, but if you want to make it more robust, you probably want to store it on the user object itself. So if this user logs into a different computer, you'll see that shopping cart item on all the computers. But let's just go ahead and try to do that. So every time that you add or remove a shopping cart item of your cart, you want to kind of persist that state somewhere. So let's go ahead and go to the main app. I think that's where our context is set up for the cart. So we have our cart state, and we have that passed into a provider, which is going to be accessible in all of our components using the use context hook, right? So what we want to do is anytime this cart state changes, we want to persist the cart state to local storage. So very similar to how we did it here with the user state, we could just simply copy this, and we're going to say whenever cart state changes, we are going to persist cart state of index 0 to cart. All right, so now when I add items, you should see that show up in your local storage. I can show you that real quick if I go to my application tab. So here you click application, you go to your local storage, and as I go back and add items to my cart, I should see them show up here, hopefully. Let's see. You know, it's actually not showing up. Maybe I need to do a hard refresh of my application. Let's see. Try adding something. All right, there we go. I really don't get it. Sometimes you have to refresh your browser when you're dealing with this create React app. Sometimes your changes don't take, and I don't know why. So again, like I said before, your first line of defense when you're debugging is just do a hard refresh. You can go up here and click empty cache and hard reload, or I just like doing a command R, and that does the same thing. So now you can see that the cart is actually stored here, and we have one item in it. And as you keep adding stuff, you'll get more items added to your cart. And then when you refresh the page, that cart is still persisted. Well, we have to fix that, but it should have been persisted. So now what we need to do is when the cart is first loaded, we need to try to fetch that cart from local storage. And we already did that with the user here. So let's just do a very similar approach with this use state callback function. So let me just go ahead and do that. And instead of getting user from local storage, we're going to get the cart. And I'm going to rename this a cart in local storage. And we to just return an empty array instead of an empty object. So it's kind of like the exact same code. Let's make sure this actually works. I'm gonna do a hard refresh just in case. So let's add some bread and let's refresh the page. And you'll notice that the bread item stayed in our cart. So we can go back to cart and bread is still there, refresh the page. Everything is persisted. And now, honestly, if you wanted to do this, like do a better, now if you wanted to do a more robust way of doing this, what you need to do is basically every time you click on the add to cart or remove from cart button, you'd have to invoke a backend endpoint to persist that item to the user shopping cart. But I mean, I think we already kind of understand that could be something that you could like do in your spare time as like a nice challenge. Like, how do I actually make this cart fetch from the backend, and how do I make it so when I add or remove items from my cart, it actually invokes my backend endpoints to remove that from Dynamo, or sorry, not Dynamo, Mongo. And again, I apologize. I'm not a designer, so this web page looks terrible. But again, what I'm trying to show you is like the main functionality. I think writing the JavaScript and the logic and the functionality is the most difficult part. And then the design is something that you'd probably, hopefully work with the designer who's going to give you like mockups and proofs of like how you're going to make the application. If you're on a team, if you're by yourself, then yeah, you need to go learn how to do design. But most situations I've been on, there's actually like a dedicated UX design person who gives you the site and what it's going to look like. Then you just have to implement the functionality. But yeah, I mean, I highly recommend that you learn a little bit about design and UX and accessibility to make a good website. But let's just try to do this. So now when you click on the checkout button, we want to actually take our total shopping cart and kind of show them like a page where they can enter in their like information. And we're not actually going to like integrate this with Stripe or anything. We are just going to go ahead and show a page where they can enter in their like billing address and a credit card number or something like that. And then when they click buy, that'll show them a confirmation page. So let's go ahead and make checkout be, or let's make checkout actually go to a different page. So I'm going to make a new page. Actually, where's the checkout button? Let's go to the shopping cart page, go to checkout, and we're going to have this be a button that when you click it, we are going to just say, I think it needs to be a function that says history.push, and then I'm going to say checkout. And then make sure that we bring in that history variable by using the use history hook. Remember, this is built into React Router. You can basically call it to get this object, which you can then call to change your URL. I think I covered that somewhere else. Let me just double check. Did I talk about that before? Yeah, we're doing that a couple other places, so that's not anything new. All right, so if you click checkout, it takes you to this checkout page, which I think our router is just defaulting to like a normal view. So let's go here and make a checkout page. So I'm gonna go ahead and just copy that, say checkout page. And we want to go ahead and make a new page here. So let's just make a new file called checkout page JSX. And we are going to make sure we auto import that in a second. Let's go here. Let's just copy one of these. Rename this the checkout page. Go back to our shopping cart, or sorry, our app router. Paste it in there. All right, so we've done this like so many times before. We made a new page, set it up in the router, just becoming muscle memory at this point. And we want to just go ahead and return like a React fragment for right now. But we're going to go ahead and style this in a second. So the checkout page, you need to have a form, which is going to have like some billing information and stuff like that. So let's just go ahead and say like checkout, the title. And then on the checkout page, we are going to go ahead and make a form. So if you remember on the login page, we had like a form group. So let's just go over there and grab the form group. Or what is it called? It's called a form. So let's just grab this form. In fact, let's just grab all of this. Like we want to use Bootstrap. We want to make it look like it's wrapped in everything. So let's just do this. Put the whole container in. Let's just go ahead and put checkout there. Get rid of the fragment and then auto import these things. So row, column, form group, button, I really don't know why button never seems to auto import from React Bootstrap. But let's just do it manually. All right, what else am I missing? All right, so again, we have a form, so we probably need to like set up some type of form state. So let's just do something similar like we did over here. I'm gonna go ahead and go back to this checkout page, paste in that form state, and then also have a default form going. And for this default form, what do we really want on the checkout page? Well, we want like an address. We want a first name and a last name. What else do you typically have? I don't know, we'll say card. And there's probably some more stuff that you probably need, like zip code and stuff, but let's just keep this pretty basic. But let's just go ahead and, for these different inputs that we needed, let's just add different form labels and form groups. So I'm going to say first name is going to update the field first name. And then we're going to do the same thing with last name. And let's just make a button called checkout. I'll call buy. Call it buy, call it buy. All right, so what else do we need to do? Update form value. So remember, this is like a shared function, so we need to make sure we auto import that, and that'll give us access to that function that helps us set up the form. And then also, this needs a form and a set form, a key and a set form. So let's just go ahead and pass in. Okay. I'm not sure I really like this helper function, to be honest with you. It's kind of annoying. This would be better in like a custom hook. But let's just do that. And then let's see, it's saying use state is not defined. So let's go ahead and auto import that. And it's saying login user is not defined, but we don't have a function. We're going to call like buy, or we'll just make this form submit and call a function called checkout. So let's just make a function called checkout here and print out something. All right, so our page should be good now. Let's just go back to it. So we have first name, we have last name. We probably needed a couple of other form fields here, like address, and what else do we have? Card number. We'll call it card number. So let's just copy and paste some of these things. You can style these in your spare time if you want. So we'll do an address. And then we will do a card number. All right, so now we have those 4 input fields, and you could like make this styled if you want to have this be in like different columns or something. But I mean, we could try doing that. I don't know if it's gonna, how it's gonna look. Like if I were to wrap this in one column, I'm getting distracted right now, but let's just go ahead and see what happens if we do this. Yeah, whatever. This is fine. All right, so now what they can do is they can type in these things, and then they can click buy. And what you want that to do is basically take all the items in your shopping cart, and you want that to be sent to the backend with their address. So when we call checkout, we're going to try to do that. We don't have a backend endpoint. So let's make a backend endpoint called like checkout. So that's going to be a post request to like a checkout page, and we'll call it checkout controller. Let's go over here to controllers and make a new one called checkout controller. And let's just go ahead and paste in some code. Checkout controller is going to do some stuff. We'll figure out what it does in just a second, but let's make sure this is all like set up to work. Do that. And let's also console log what's coming in the back end. So I'm gonna say rec.body so we can actually see what's coming over the wire. All right, so now we have a backend endpoint we can do a post request to. And what we want the front end to do is basically send the form information and all the cart items to the backend when you click this buy button. Okay, so we know how to do this. We've done like Ajax requests or Axios requests multiple times now. So we just want to go back to the checkout page. Let me close this so you can actually see what I'm doing here. Let me do it this way. Here we go. All right, so how do we do it in other pages? Well, we basically, I think we did like a fetch. Let's look at this real quick to refresh our memory. Yeah, we did an Axios. So let's just go ahead and grab some of this logic. And we're going to go to like a confirmation page. So let's change this to confirmation, which we haven't made that page yet. So we'll do that in a second. But when we do the post request, we want to basically post the form to a checkout page. And what we actually want to do is we also need to get the shopping cart. So if I grab cart using context, we should be able to also send the cart. So remember here, we can actually grab like the cart and say use context. And then I could say like, I think it's called cart context. Shopping cart context, like that. Make sure that's auto imported, which I think it is. Shopping cart, yep. All right, so we brought that in and now we can actually send over our cart. Now, technically you don't need to send over every single cart item, like the full item. You just need to send over the IDs and have your backend process that. So what we could do here is we're going to send over the form. So that's like the address, their name, etc., like that. But we also want to send over the shopping cart. So I'm going to say items and then cart.map. And then I'm going to say item of item._ID. So this will send over the form. In fact, I'm going to wrap this in. I'm going to say like contact info. And then also items. So hopefully I think this should work. Let's just try this out. When we click checkout, it should like redirect us and send over a request. So let's go ahead and see. Oh, I'm getting an error because this needs to be async. And I'm missing a bunch of stuff. So make sure E is passed in. Make sure you've imported Axios. And make sure that history has been set up. So const history is equal to use history. Really wish my ESLint would just highlight this stuff when I make errors like that. But all right, let's just type in some stuff here and we're going to go ahead and just click the buy button. You see that I made a request to checkout. It's a post request, I believe. We got contact info, which has the billing address, and we have items, which happens to have all the IDs of the shopping cart that they have selected. But the issue is that our backend actually crashed. So why did the backend crash? Let's go to our index and figure out why. So we have checkout controller here. I think checkout controller is not defined. Not sure why, because it definitely is. Let's try it again. Okay, that worked that time. I don't know. Actually, it didn't work. Oh, let's see. So in our checkout controller, we didn't actually send back a response. Sometimes when you're dealing with Axios, if you see that your request just says pending here, that means your server is literally just sitting there waiting for like a response to come back. But we didn't actually say res.json or anything. So I'm just going to send back a message that says like success. But what you'd probably do is process the user card information using Stripe or something, and then send back success message with confirmation code. All right, so we're not going to do all this. We're not going to integrate with Stripe or any type of system, but you could potentially save the order inside of Mongo if you wanted to, and then you could simply send back a confirmation code. You know, we might as well do that. I mean, like this is the tutorial to show you how to do stuff. So let's just go ahead and go to our models, and I'm going to make a order model so that we know when people like actually created new orders. So I'm going to make an order schema. That's going to be an order model, and then an order model here. Now the main difference with this is that we need to have a contact info, which I guess we could just do an object here. And then we need to have, what's it called? Items, which is an array. And I think you can get more like detailed into like what is contact info, how is it structured, but let's just keep it simple. So what we could do is when that payload comes over, remember we're sending over contact info and items, we can actually store that inside our order model. So let's just go ahead and say order model here, and we're going to create a new one called new order model. We're going to pass it that rec.body, and then we're going to say order.save, call await on it. That'll actually like create the order and then save it to Mongo on the back end. And then we can actually return the order ID. So what I'm going to do is just return that whole order ID. All right, so let's verify this works. If I click buy, there was no error. If I go to checkout, we see that we got back an ID here. So this is kind of like your confirmation code, your order ID. So what you could do is you could take that checkout confirmation code and display it in the UI. So then that later on, when they need to like call you and say, I haven't got my order yet, you can actually go into your MongoDB Atlas, and let me refresh this page so that it shows up. But there should now be a new collection called orders, and we should have that order here. So we have an order, it tells us what items they bought. It also tells us what's their contact information, like where do I ship those items to. And then you can also store like the full items here if you wanted to get like, if you wanted to not have to do like lookups. It's up to you, but yeah, so now what we kind of need to do is just make sure we show a confirmation page. So let's make a new page here called confirmation page. So confirmation page.jsx. That is going to be a really simple page that just shows confirmation number. Just do this. Confirmation, and then a paragraph that says like your confirmation number is, and we're going to hard code that for now, but we'll come back and replace it. All right, so what you could do is you could use some type of context to keep track of the confirmation number. Just go ahead and delete all this stuff. So remember, when you check out, you get back a confirmation ID, right? We need to store that somewhere in your UI so that you can redirect to a new page and show that ID. Now, the only way to do that is with probably application state. So what we need to do is go back to our index, I believe. Not the index, the main app, and we should probably just make a new state variable here called like const confirmation state equals use state. And that could be null by default. And what we're going to do is make another context. There's probably different ways we could do this, but I'm going to say confirmation context is equal to react.create context. And we need to basically wrap everything with this provider here. So I'm going to say make a new provider called confirmation context, which has confirmation state. And what that allows us to do is on the checkout page, when we're done actually submitting the order and everything's working fine, we could call and update the confirmation number. So I'm going to say const confirmation, set confirmation, or it's kind of hard to spell. I'm going to say use context, and then I'm going to say confirmation context. All right, so when we're done here, we should get back an actual like payload. So we can say data, and that's going to be the order. And all we want to do is basically just store the order of ID. So we have the ID of the order, and we can store it and show it later on. So I think if everything works fine here, we can then take that same confirmation number that we stored and show it inside our confirmation page. Let's go to the confirmation page, and let's just go ahead and bring in that context again. And really all we need is that confirmation number. So let's just go ahead and grab that, and we can display it here. Instead of AAA, we're going to display it there. And I think if everything works fine, we could probably, let's see, get rid of some of this stuff. We don't need use state, don't need form. All right, let's test it out. It'll probably crash because I never write perfect code. So let's go here. Let's click on that checkout button. Honestly, actually, when you check out, you should probably clear the cart too. That's something I forgot. Let's bring in the cart context as well when you check out. And I'm going to go ahead and just say cart and set cart. And then cart. That's called shopping cart. Oh, actually, we already brought it in here. We have a shopping cart context. We just need to bring in the setter. So let's just do that. And what we're going to do is set this equal to an empty array if everything was successful so that they don't have those same items lingering around in their cart. All right, so let's refresh, make sure everything's good. Go to checkout, type in some stuff, click on buy, and our cart is empty, so that worked, but it didn't take us to the confirmation page because we don't actually have it. So in the app router, I just need to make sure I make a confirmation page. Confirmation page. So as you can tell, like as you get more experience with development, some of the stuff becomes more tedious. Like it's just copying, pasting code, refactoring code. But here you go. We have a confirmation number. So that is basically kind of the flow. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff you could do to make this look prettier, make this more user-friendly, but like all in all, like this button should be hidden if you don't have anything in your cart. Like you don't need to show this stuff. The confirmation page should probably go away once you refresh the browser or something, but that's basically the gist of how you can set up some type of MERN shopping cart. I would honestly use like Shopify if you actually wanted to build a legit company, because there's a lot of stuff that goes into this. But if you're just trying to learn, this is a great way to learn by building out a example MERN site. And trying to think if there's anything else. I don't want to keep on just adding stuff to this because I think I've covered a lot of stuff, and now you should kind of understand how you can add on features to the shopping cart. I would recommend that if you want to challenge yourself, you could store the shopping cart information on Mongo so that when users log in to this application on a different browser, they can see the exact same shopping cart. So imagine like Amazon, you log in on one computer, you add some items, you log in another computer, you can still see those items. I would try to actually, the second thing I would recommend you do is on the checkout page and the checkout endpoint, what was that called? Checkout controller? I would actually try to implement with Stripe, like read through the docs, try to get Stripe hooked up into your UI. There's usually like React components that you can use on your checkout form, which accepts like a card number and stuff, so that is never sent to your backend. You never want to send card numbers to your backend unless you actually know what you're doing, because if you leak those card numbers, you're going to get in big trouble. So I would just use Stripe to have those card numbers sent over to the Stripe. They process them, and then they will call one of your endpoints using probably like a webhook, which you can then like further confirm that the user bought those items. And then on the confirmation page, you could probably have, I don't know, like more details about what they bought, how much it costs. That's typically how you do it. Like Amazon, you buy some items, you can go back to your orders. So that's another thing. A third thing I recommend you doing is having an orders thing so you can see the orders that you've done in the past. So maybe like an orders link here, you click it, it takes you to an orders page. You fetch all those orders from Mongo, like we just created one, right? So make sure you can like have an endpoint for fetching all your orders, so that if the user like has an issue with their order or they never received it, they can call you and say, hey, my confirmation number is ABC123. Where's my order? Have you shipped it yet? What's going on? And if you can think of any more things, like just keep on adding functionality. Or if you want to like work on your design chops, maybe find out how you can style this to make it look nicer, make it look cleaner. Go around and look at other like shopping cart applications and see if you can mimic what they're doing. This React Bootstrap thing up here could probably be changed to like MERN shopping cart. You know what? Before I wrap this up, there's one thing I wanted to do. I don't know if you're still sticking around. On the front end, we have a bunch of like hard-coded URLs. Okay, this is not a good approach because it's like sprinkled all throughout our application. So instead, you could probably make a services folder. And inside of this, you can actually make all of these Axios requests. So I can make a new file called like create order.js. Actually, what some people do is they'll just name it like orders, and they can say, they'll do like export const create order, and they'll paste that code in here. Just go ahead and do this. So basically, you want to have the Axios call wrapped in a function outside of your component because it's going to make your code cleaner and easier to refactor later. And then also, this probably needs to come from like a base URL. So I'm going to say like base URL is equal to this, so that we don't have the same URL like sprinkled all throughout our code base. Because when you go to live, you want to change that URL. All right, does that make sense? So I would recommend doing this for all your functions. So we have one for create order. So what we can do instead is call create order here, and it's going to be a little bit of work. Like we're going to have to pass in form here and cart. I'm not sure if there's anything else we need to pass in. Let's see, form and cart. But does that make sense? Do you understand what I'm doing? Like everywhere you have an Axios call, you should probably wrap that in a function inside of a different file, so that if you ever decide that you don't want to use Axios, you don't have to go into all your components and change how you're doing it. Like you could just, let me make sure this works. That confirmation of ID of undefined. This just needs to be order, I believe. Right, so I'm not going to refactor all these things because it's going to take me a while, but I think you get the point. That's another fourth thing that you could try doing, is go through the remaining components and look for anywhere we said localhost of 8080. And what you want to do instead is probably pull out that Axios request and put it inside like an orders file, a products file, or a user file. Like when we log in, like all this stuff is hard-coded everywhere. I think a good refactoring experience for you would be to go through and refactor this. Also the images. Images are hard-coded to this URL as well. You could make a function inside of the services directory called like, I don't know, get image, and pass that the image ID, and then that will return a URL for you. A lot of cleanup you could do. But I think I kind of showed you the gist of everything. I mean, if you have any comments or concerns, leave them in the comments below. But I think I'm going to wrap up the series. I think I covered a lot of stuff, and I don't want to keep on just like, I don't know, holding your hand through this whole process. I think it's time that you can build something for yourself now and keep on adding on features. And hopefully you learned a thing or two from watching this that you could easily abstract to any type of web application or UI. Like if someone asks you to build a to-do list application using Mongo, I think you should be able to do it, assuming that I actually did a good job teaching these concepts and showing you the debugger and showing you the network tab and all this stuff. But yeah, all right, thanks so much for watching. I'm gonna wrap this up and have a good day.